Okay. So welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today to be a part of this really future-focused discussion of gender equality. It's really wonderful to have you all here. I'm sure you are just as excited as I am to hear from all of the absolutely brilliant people that we have with us today. Just going to continue giving our participants, our audience members, just a few more minutes to come and join us and settle in. So as we're doing that, you might take a moment to share with us in the chat box where you are joining us from. It's always nice, particularly with these virtual gatherings, right, to get a sense of the different geographies that are kind of converging in this online space. In-person events are amazing, but we do have this opportunity to kind of acknowledge all of the places around the world that we bring with us into these virtual environments. So as we're getting settled here, I'm going to do a little bit of digital housekeeping. I'll introduce myself, I'll introduce Stand, and of course the Imagine Equality campaign. Then I will introduce Molly, our panel moderator, and we'll get going. So if you haven't already, please make sure that your microphone is muted, at least for now. And if you'd like, feel free to turn on your camera. I would ask that you save any questions that you have for our question and answer session, and that will take place after all of the panelists have spoken. So then you'll be invited to share your questions for the panel in the chat box. And do please keep your questions and comments, of course, thoughtful and respectful. You might consider now removing anything that could be distracting from your view so that you can really be present with us here. Turn your phone over, close or mute any windows that really do not need you right now. Thank you for doing that. So I am Ashlyn Lavin. I am SUIS's STAND program student engagement coordinator. And so SUIS's STAND program is really a suite of programs, projects, and initiatives that support students in third-level institutions in Ireland to engage with global citizenship education. And we're here together today as a part of STAND and USI's 10,000 Students Imagine Equality campaign. So with this campaign, we're working to raise awareness about the causes and consequences of gender inequality in Ireland and around the world. We believe that by learning more about the root causes of gender inequality, we're much better able to imagine and take action to bring about a more gender equal world. So it's important to say here that this campaign and the events that have been a part of it would not have been possible without the very generous support of Irish Aid, who fund our programs. I would also like to extend my gratitude to USI, the Union of Students in Ireland, who partner with us to bring these 10,000 students campaigns to you every spring and every autumn. Thank you so much. I also want to say thank you to my colleague, Madeline, who is here to help with any possible technical issues that might come up during the discussion. So if you need any help at all, you can reach out to her through the chat box, and you can do that with a direct message if you'd prefer not to throw it out into the kind of general chat. Okay, so now I am so very excited to introduce our panel moderator, Molly Sterling. So Molly is a musician, facilitator, and a founder of the Reclaim Project, which is an empowering community platform for gender minorities and women who have experienced power abuse within their creative industries. So the Reclaim Project was created during Molly's time in STAND's Ideas Collective program. Molly consistently strives for their work to be a crossover between art, activism, and social justice. Thank you so much, Molly. I'll pass it over to you now.
Thanks so much, Ashlyn. And thanks, to both you and Madeline. It's been an amazing process so far, so I'm so excited to hear from everyone. So my name is Molly, as Ashlyn said, and I'm so delighted to be here as the moderator of this panel and just kind of to have the excuse to meet a group of people who are doing incredible work in the field of gender equality. And I've no doubt that by the end of the panel, we'll all just feel so informed and so inspired, because they all have such unique perspectives. So I'm so excited to hear from them. And yeah, I suppose bearing in mind like that gender equality is such a huge topic, so we're going to do our best today to cover what we can. It's hard to cover everything, obviously. And we'll start with introducing each panelist, and then we'll open up into a panel discussion. And yeah, we'll be taking audience questions as well. So do pop your questions into the chat throughout the discussion, and Madeline will keep an eye on them. So before I hand you over to our amazing panelists, who will introduce themselves, I just want to give you a bit of my background. So I guess I'm in this space of gender equality work because of personal experience with men's violence and with pervasive attitudes in the music industry in particular. Gender-based violence and the kind of toxic, heavy expectations that are put on women and on gender minorities feels like it feels like an inescapable issue in my life and in the lives of so many of my friends, which I'm sure a lot of you can probably relate to. So I guess I made a decision that if it's going to be in my life, then I get to control at least a small aspect of how it gets to be in my life. And for me, that's in the form of activism and in the form of the Reclaim Project, which I love so much and is my baby. Which started during Stan's Ideas Collective and wouldn't have started if it wasn't for that program. So we gather for community conversations and collaborative arts projects. We're gender minorities and women who've experienced power abuse in the arts, as Ashlyn mentioned, and we get to remind ourselves of like why we engage with our creativity in the first place. And there is an amazing coalition of organisations called SEE, which stands for Safe Arts of Ireland, who are doing such needed and incredible work in kind of the legislative side of things, to kind of keep safe and respectful environments in the arts in Ireland. So definitely show them some support and love where you can. So yeah, I guess my way of fighting against gender-based violence in the arts is to reclaim that joy and that sense of self that perpetrators of violence try to kind of strip from us. And if we reclaim that part of ourselves, then they can never win. They can only win if we lose ourselves. And by reminding ourselves of our class, unique, creative qualities, we're winning. So I very much identify with the legend Audre Lorde, who said, caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. So I won't go on for too much longer, but I just want to say if power abuse within the arts is something you can identify with, then first of all, I'm really sorry that that's happened to you. That should never have happened to you, and it's not your fault. And secondly, if you'd like to join a community of others with similar experiences where we make art and we have nice chats, please do join us at the Reclaim Project. So I'll stop going on. Our first panelist is the incredible Tammy Darcy, who's the founder and the CEO of the Shona project. She's the author of You've Got This, which is a guidebook for teens, and an award-winning businesswoman and humanitarian. Tammy is really passionate about eradicating bullying and rivalry amongst girls and promoting the fact that our differences are what makes us special and our challenges are what teach us understanding, resilience, and determination. Take it away, Tammy.
Thank you, Molly. I just want to say I love your hair. I feel like I need to go home and make myself more colourful so I can keep up with you. And thanks to Aisling and the team for inviting me. I've been asked just to give you like a 5-minute background to the work that I do and why I do it. And I guess that's what I'm going to do. So as Molly said, I'm the founder and CEO of an organisation called the Shona Project. And our mission is to educate, inspire and empower today's Irish girls to become tomorrow's strong, confident and curious young women. And the story of the Shona Project goes back a very, very long time to when I was 14. The organisation is named after my sister Shona. She was a beautiful girl with so much potential, so much to offer the world. She's my big sister. There's a year between us. And when I was in second year in school and she was in third year, she was just about to do her junior cert, and she was diagnosed with a brain tumor. So long story short, she's now in full-time nursing care and has been since she was 15. But one of the things that I always struggled with during that period was this kind of grief that this girl who was there first thing every morning. You know, we used to share a room. The first face that I would see and the last face that I would see before I would go to bed was no longer there in the same way. And I wasn't given any support to deal with that challenge. It wasn't even identified. Nobody even said, you know, this must be really hard, which is often just what we need to hear, just acknowledgement that what we're going through is hard, so we don't feel that there's something wrong with us. And that was a huge challenge and had a huge effect on me, obviously. And there was other stuff going on that year as well. My parents were separating, and that was kind of stressful. And I was also bullied in school. And because of that, I went from a straight A student who was very involved in sport and very popular and had lots of friends to becoming, you know, this girl who was just surviving every day and just trying to get through the days. So it's very hard, you know, to focus on your career and what you want to do in the future when you are in that survival mode. And again, I thought I was the only one who'd ever experienced that. But when I grew up, I started coaching girls soccer and really passionate about girls sport. And I started to see that so many of the girls that were coming down to train with me felt the same way that I used to feel, that they were going through huge challenges and traumas, that they were afraid to speak up about them. And that for so many of them, that hour where they would play soccer with me or with the other coaches in that week was the only bit of stress relief, support, role modeling that they got. So I went and had a look at the problem in more detail and saw, you know, that the statistics when it comes to the experiences that these girls are going through were quite striking. And just to share a few of them with you, research done by Dove last year showed that 87% of girls in Ireland don't have high body esteem. And that's one of the highest figures in the world, which when you think about what's going on in other countries is really striking. We also have the highest rate of death by suicide amongst teenage girls in the whole of Europe. Self-harm is on the rise. For me, one of the biggest issues is, and one of the kind of big bugbears I have, is that by the age of 13, half of girls are giving up playing sport and losing out on all those amazing things that they can get from sport or the arts or whatever way they choose to express themselves and become part of a community. And then when those girls grow up to become women, only 14% of our companies have female CEOs, which is, you know, double the average at EU level, which is 6%, but it's still nowhere near what it should be. And there's obviously external barriers to that. And there's also internal barriers. And when I looked even further, I realized that only 18% of applications for those leadership roles a couple of years ago came from women. So I thought, wouldn't it be great if there was an organization that would help girls and support girls through these teenage years to make sure that when they leave school and go into their careers, that they are confident, that they believe in themselves, and that they have communities, role models and mentors that they need to achieve what it is that they want to achieve. And that's when I started the Shona project in 2016. I didn't have a clue what I was doing, and in many ways I still don't have a clue what I'm doing, but I'm figuring it out on my feet, and we've seen this impact just at a huge level across Ireland. So we support young women at this key time in their lives by giving them information, advice, and a safe space to share their stories. That's what we do. And the impact has been quite big. So over the last couple of years, I have worked with 20,000 girls in schools in every corner of Ireland. We've had a really successful Shine Festival, which last year we brought together 100 speakers online, like Vicky Phelan, Laura Whitmore, Angela Scanlon, sports stars, artists, entrepreneurs, mental health professionals. And that was attended by over 40,000 young girls in 3 days with over 1 million video loads, which shows that, you know, there's an appetite for this, that the girls are welcoming it and the schools are welcoming it. And what we want to do is to create cultures of kindness and encourage girls to support and value each other, which is making schools more positive places to be. And it's something we're really passionate about, because when women support other women, and I'm acknowledging that there is a lot of other issues, but this is where we feel that we can add value. And when women support other women and girls support other girls and stand up for their right to be whoever they are, you know, and to express themselves however they want to, and even going down to the definition of girl, because the definition of girl means something different to everybody. And we should defend our rights to have that definition and to apply it in our own way. And that's just a little introduction to the Shona project and the work that we do. And I can't wait to hear from the other panelists. So thanks again.
Thank you so much, Tammy. You've achieved so much with the Shona project. It's actually kind of hard to like actually even comprehend all the work that you've done. So thank you for that overview, and yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing more from you later. Next, we're going to introduce the incredible Tejaswy Swathi, who is from Hyderabad, India, and she's currently pursuing a master's in global health at Trinity College, Dublin. She's part of Women in Global Health Ireland's core team for communication support via different social media platforms. She holds a PharmD undergraduate degree from India, and she's been associated with different NGOs focusing work on children, education, and gender in different roles. She's really passionate about real-world challenges in the global health space and inequality issues faced by women. She believes in and lives by the quote, "Empowered women empower women," which is class. Thanks so much for being with us, Tejaswy.
Thanks so much, Molly. It's so honored. I'm so honored to be with all of the amazing panelists here to talk about inequality. And it's so amazing to have like different sectors in here. And I'm glad to represent Women in Global Health. So Women in Global Health is a global movement and an organization that started in 2015. That brings all the genders together and backgrounds to achieve gender equality in global health leadership in specific, because we all know that women hold 70% of the healthcare workforce, but yet we are only representing less than 25% of the leadership roles that are there. So Women in Global Health Irish chapter in specific, we want to increase the awareness and highlight and platform Irish and Irish affiliated women in global health, and facilitate supportive networking spaces where women can meet, support and learn from each other, and map the Irish policy landscape for work-life balance and gender equitable work policies. There are policies that are happening for gender equality, but we want to work along the lines and acknowledge it, bring awareness and talk about it and make it happen. Because we all can agree that health systems function better when women who manage them have an equal say in designing them and delivering them. Especially during the COVID, we have seen the disparities in gender, where 85% of the 115 COVID task force had only majority of men as leadership, holding leadership roles. And gender equality for me personally, I am bothered by the fact that how normalized it is to see women in less paying job, underpaying job, under-recognized work, and the huge expectations of managing house and work and still be okay with it. I am personally bothered by that fact, and that's why I believe equality should be achieved soon. And for me, gender equal world would be where women, or any gender for that matter, will feel safe to go to the workplace, will have an equal say, equal pay, equal dignity at their place. And specifically in global health, seeing women hold 50% of the leadership role would be a gender equal world for me. And thank you so much again for having me here. You're all amazing.
Thank you so much, Tejaswy, and I totally hear you. And the normalization of gender inequality in the workplace is so frustrating. It's the normalization aspect that can get really like under your skin. So thank you so much for being here today. Next, we're going to hear from the amazing Teny Avakian, who was born in Tehran, Iran. She moved to Boston, Massachusetts, and then at 13 moved with her family to Armenia. She graduated from Yerevan State University with a BA in International Relations and Diplomacy. She spent time in the Lebanon and France for graduate studies and then returned to Armenia. Since then, she's worked with tech companies. She's worked in several capacities for Teach for Armenia, and she's now currently the CEO of the incredible Sports for Social Impact organization, Girls of Armenia Leadership Soccer. Thanks, Teny.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you everyone for coming to this amazing panel. I'm actually really excited just to have so many amazing individuals talking about a topic that I'm so very passionate about. Just to give everyone a little bit of context, because sometimes Armenia is not one of the countries that is well known, or the context at least is not well known. The capital of Yerevan is a very modern, let's say Eastern European type city, whereas the rural communities in Armenia are very humble, mostly, you know, agricultural farming communities that don't have a lot of infrastructure, don't have a lot of or any facilities, as a matter of fact, outside of the schoolhouse. So it's very, very humble and basic. Armenia is also a very traditional, conservative society where cultural norms and traditions are heavily followed, especially in rural communities. Now, what this does for our girls in the rural communities is puts a huge burden on them, having to, you know, uphold by these sometimes ridiculous standards as to what the expectations are. And unfortunately, a lot of times in the Armenian context, our girls don't really have a choice. So, you know, they're born into a village or a community where their future is sort of decided for them. What we like to do or want to accomplish as an organization, Girls of Armenia Leadership Soccer, is to bring about, you know, social impact through sports. We use sports because it's an amazing tool to get, you know, everyone to come together, not only as a team, but also as a community. It's super easy to bring sports to a village that doesn't really have much going on. And outside of the social impact that we're having with these girls, we're also providing them with a space where they can also be physically healthy. I want to give you a little bit of idea on when, you know, where we stood in 2016 when the organization was launched. And I remember having seen this article, and actually I think it was a news clipping that the former president of the Football Federation of Armenia actually made a statement that he said, no girl should ever play sports, let alone soccer. And no self-respecting father would allow their girls to do so. So that's the space in 2016 that we entered into. With the work of some amazing individuals within the country and with the, you know, heavy lobby of the organization that I work for, and you know, the amazing people that have championed us throughout our journey, I'm very proud to say that today, you know, obviously the president of the Football Federation has changed. We now have funding for a women's national team and, you know, U19 and U17 teams. There are grassroots activities taking place all around Armenia that support girls and women in the sport of soccer, in football. We are in a space where we're now hosting over 80 teams and over 1,000 girls playing soccer within their communities across 8 regions of Armenia. And, you know, this is when we say, you know, girls playing soccer in Armenia, that's basically almost unheard of, because it's culturally, like, even in the city, when you go to a physical education class at a private school, most girls just sit out because they're not expected to play. And, you know, we're coming in and we're empowering these girls to want to play a sport, doing so in what's considered a male dominant space. We're breaking so many cultural and gender barriers just by having them play. Now, on top of that, we, alongside some of our amazing partners like Coaches Across Continents, have this purposeful play curriculum that really empowers them, teaches them all these life skills that are necessary, not only to be successful on the field, but also in life. Hoping to create pathways for our girls to lead them to an alternate possible future. We're not here to tell them what's right or wrong. We're here to empower them with all the skills and knowledge they need in order to make choices for themselves, in order to have the strength to make the choices for themselves. And, some of those choices are, some of those options are brought forth to them because they're playing a sport. And I'm very proud to say that we have 6 to 8 girls, I believe, that are now playing on the women's national team because of goals. Like, otherwise they would not have been recognized. Otherwise they wouldn't have had the opportunity to step outside of what their cultural norm was within their village. So, we have a long way to go to be able to say that we've, really, made a difference. But I feel like making a difference in one girl's life is ultimately making a difference in, a community, because just these communities where they're seeing their daughters and sisters play a sport that's usually reserved for boys, whether they want to or not, there's already a paradigm shift happening within that community. There's already change happening. Those young boys and men, when they grow older, they're now already, they've already seen their peers in a different light. And that's going to stay with them in the future. So the indirect impact is far greater than we can measure today. So hopefully in the next 15, 20 years, we'll really see what type of change that something as simple as a sport can bring to entire communities. And, in our case, it's very much possible to see change within our lifetimes because our communities are very small. The entire country of Armenia is about 3 million population. So truly having that impact one community at a time is very, very possible. I don't want to take up too much of our time. I know there's plenty of people that want to speak and we have some questions to get to, so I'm very excited. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you, Teny. Goals is like just another organization along with the Shona project and all the other people that are here. Like, the magnitude and positive impact of the work that you're doing is honestly so huge that it's actually hard to comprehend. I'm like, oh my God, all of the barriers you're breaking there is just incredible. So thank you so much, Teny. We're going to hear from Tam next. Tom Crowley, who is the Gender Equality Policy Lead in the Development, Cooperation and Africa Division of the Department of Foreign Affairs. And he's been working in international development since 1992, including 5 years in Latin America and 3 years in Africa. He has also worked in rural and community development, education, and with the NGO sector. So thanks, Tom.
Thank you very much, Molly, and just also to say thank you very much to the other panelists for their stories. Yeah, I think they're very inspiring, and thank you for the work that you do. Yeah, because I must say I'm very honoured and humbled to be in the presence of such passionate activists. Yeah, to learn about the work that you're doing, and also as well seeing the impact that you are having in challenging barriers and bringing those barriers down. And also as well, just to kind of congratulate Stand for organising this campaign on Imagine Gender Equality. Yeah, I looked at your statement of beliefs and I found it really powerful. Yeah, like justice, equality and fairness really are core values for a better world. And I think these are values that resonated very strongly with me, and they also resonate strongly with Ireland's foreign and international development policy. In your kind introduction, Molly, you outlined, I suppose, the areas where I have experience. And I suppose one thing I would like to say there is that I have encountered gender inequality in nearly every situation. Yeah, so it was in the classroom in Ethiopia, where just 2 of 25 of the students were women. It was in meetings with farmer groups in the mountains in Honduras, where no women attended, even though the majority of them were farmers, or if women did attend, they were silent. And then I suppose one notable and powerful personal experience that I had the privilege to work on and to support was the case of Seper Sarko in Guatemala. Yeah, so in 2016, I was in the Guatemalan courtroom where 15 Indigenous women, who at that time were the same age as my mum, in their late 70s, yeah, and they had just received justice for crimes that were committed against them during the internal armed conflict in Guatemala in the 1980s, yeah. I mean, just very briefly, their husbands had been murdered, and then they were subject to gender-based violence and enslavement by the same soldiers and militia that murdered their husbands, you know. And then it was 30 years later, I mean, they courageously pursued this case. So what had happened to them would not happen to their daughters or their granddaughters, and also to generate a public debate in Guatemala about people's, you know, social norms and attitudes. And personally, I found their courage, leadership, and perseverance for justice to be very humbling and also very inspirational. And I suppose it also echoes at this point in time as well, in that, you know, the way when we're seeing the terrible human rights abuses that are unfolding in the Ukraine, yeah, and that we know how the consequences of these will be felt by women and girls going forward. So maybe that's just a little bit about my background, and I suppose kind of my experience of why I see gender equality as being so absolutely central to a better, kinder, more peaceful world. And then just to talk a little bit about kind of what Ireland's position is, yeah. I suppose we all know that because of inequality in society, women and girls are hardest hit by the effects of extreme poverty, climate change, and conflict. This is why gender equality, and in particular the empowerment of women and girls, is at the heart of Ireland's foreign and international development policy. And this policy is based on the important principles that, one, gender equality is a fundamental human right, and gender equality is a fundamental condition for sustainable global development. And what does this mean? Yeah, what does this mean for Ireland and our international foreign policy and our international development policy? Well, this means that we're committed to promoting gender equality on the international stage. For example, currently Ireland is using its membership of the UN Security Council to highlight and focus on women and how they can contribute to achieving peace and security. Also, a better world, Ireland's international development policy has gender equality at its heart. And what does this mean? This means that promoting gender equality is central to all the work that we support, be it in rural development, education, health, social protection, humanitarian response, and governance, you know. And also, we also support specific interventions to achieving gender equality, such as increasing funding for sexual and reproductive health rights, increasing support to feminist organizations, and to addressing gender-based violence. Yeah, and I suppose one thing that resonates, and I think you echo it so well, what it means in practice, is that in our development assistance, we focus on interventions that have a transformative impact on gender equality. So I suppose what we mean by this is that we recognize that achieving gender equality involves going beyond looking at individual women and girls, but also seek to address the key structural and institutional barriers to achieving gender equality and ensuring a focus on men, boys, and masculinities. So maybe just to round off, I suppose maybe what's kind of the newer things that have been coming in the last year for us. I think in 2021, we've made new and additional commitments to supporting women-led organisations and social movements, and have increased dedicated funding to girls' education for those who may not otherwise access or remain in school. So these are just some of the some examples of how we are seeking to promote gender equality. So thank you very much, and I'll leave space for other panelists to join.
Thanks so much, Tom. It's so important to have, I suppose, like a kind of a governmental perspective for a panel like this, you know, because it's obviously such a huge aspect of it. Thank you so much. Next, we have the amazing Dannielle McKenna, who is the project manager of the Rialto Youth Project. The Rialto Youth Project is a community youth organisation based in Dublin 8, and it aims to bring about social change, providing an integrated youth service based on the needs of young people, and in particular those most at risk. So thanks so much, Dannielle.
Thanks very much, Molly, and thanks for the invitation to be here. It's really great. And to also listen and learn so much from the other panelists. That's always really exciting. So my name is Dannielle, as Molly said, and I manage the project in Rialto Youth Project. But today I'm also talking to you about a project that we're partners on called What Does He Need? And that partnership is also with artist and writer Fiona Whelan and theatre company Broken Talkers. But just before I get into that part, I just want to bring you back a little bit to give you some context from where this project came from. So we're always looking at doing critical social education and arts-based practice with young people, because we really believe in arts as a methodology for young people's voice to be heard within society and as a platform for change. So that's always a really exciting way for us to do practice. And in 2012, we began a project called Natural History of Hope with Fiona Whelan. And the aim of that project was to work with girls, young women and women. It was an intergenerational piece to collect stories from women to really understand what was it like and what is it like to grow up and live in Rialto. So through that project, we collected over 250 stories, and we weren't expecting to do that. So when we did collect all them stories, it was really important that we gave these stories a voice. And part of doing that, we needed to do a bit of a thematic analysis to understand what's happening within these stories. What are girls and women saying? And we need to understand this. So we worked alongside a couple of different researchers, one being Kathleen Lynch from UCD. And we really began to understand 7 themes that were emerging among all the stories. And one of the main themes that kept coming up again was either the threat of violence or violence for young women. And this was seen from a very, very young age. And what's really important for us to also speak about is that the threat of violence or violence wasn't only at a personal level, it was very much at a systemic level. So women were talking about the violence that they experienced within the education sector, within the employment sector, within the housing sector, and then their role of women within society as being seen as carers and in the caring role, that kind of effective domain. And then there was a real threat of violence actually within their own lives as well. And experiencing domestic violence and violence within the community. So we had done a big performance in 2016. But after that project had kind of come to a conclusion, we went back and we're like, we need to do something. We cannot ignore this. So we always believe in taking a 2-pronged approach where you're always challenging the system and the systemic violence that occurs, especially around inequality. We also work in an area where our young people are always experiencing oppression due to the class system that we have here in Ireland. But another thing that has also emerged, among many other things, is the gender inequality. So for us, we believe we need to do the work with the young men, and we need to do work with men to understand how is it that men are shaped by the world they live in, but also in turn, how do their words, attitudes, behaviours also then shape the world. So it's really that we really needed to engage young men and men into a process. So it's very, very difficult to do that, because the last thing you want to do is promote defensiveness or, you know, bring in something that may not be something that young men don't want to talk about. So we developed a process called What Does He Need? And the aim of this process, it wasn't around doing kind of education, it wasn't around training, but it was about engaging as many young men and men as possible into a process of dialogue and into a process of deep inquiry into the issues that are going on, also for young men, which in turn then impact on others in their lives. So we had to also be very careful in how we spoke about this, because sometimes using the word, say, toxic masculinity, we learned very, very quickly that word is not a good word to use when you're trying to work with men and young men, because actually there's many elements of masculinity that are very beautiful and very important. And we don't want to label a gender role with being something like toxic. But what we did see is that there are elements within masculinity that are not healthy for men or women, actually. And some of them, so the four that we looked at was the use of power, the use of dominance, the suppression of vulnerability, and the suppression of anything female. So they have always been the core pieces of the work that we're doing, so that we're trying to use that approach around needs to look at how do we begin to open conversations with young men and men about this. And for us, dialogue became one of the really important pieces about this. So it is about listening. It is about deep inquiry. It is about creating safe spaces for young men to speak. And it is about that getting young people to really, really deeply reflect on what's going on, because me telling somebody something doesn't work. So it is about how do I provide a space where young men and men can deeply reflect on the issues that they have themselves and also within their community and society. And it's only then that really the change is happening. And one example of that, because practice is a really core part of what we talk about. We talk about our practice all the time. And I was doing a group with young men one of the days, and I had a student with me who was on placement in the room. And with two of the young men started slagging each other in the group, and the slagging started to get, worse and worse. And so then I started to do a piece with the group about this. And afterwards, when we were in our review, I just said to the student, I said, so can you tell me what you thought about what was happening in the room today? I said, because you were sitting closest to the young men, but yet you didn't interject. And he said to me, oh, sure, boys will be boys. And for me, I was really taken aback. And I thought that is one of the most harmful statements that has ever, that comes out in society. I really believe those kind of statements are really harming boys. And I was like, so initially inside of me, I wanted to go, la, 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 la. But actually it was like, I need to do the same practice here as we do in our group. So I was like, can you tell me what that means? Can you tell me what you believe that statement means? So then we got into a really reflective session. And by the end of it, it was like, oh my God, they were trying to humiliate each other. They were trying to see who has the most power in the group. And I was like, yeah. I was like, so do you understand what happened in that process? And I was like, oh my God, yeah. And I was like, okay. So it was really about getting somebody always to reflect and figure it out for themselves so that they have that aha moment and we're not the ones trying to say teach or train. So that's a huge amount of part of it. And then so it's always built on that. And then we've many different strands, which you can have a look at on what does he need. Some of them is around boys in the making. So where young men and men are brought and done, they do groups where they have to create a boy. They have to guide this boy through life, and they have to determine what does this boy need at different points of his life to get through. So it is about creating a real safe way, because sometimes when you do it through character work, it's a lot easier for young men to talk about experiences. So they do that character work, and then they can really begin to reflect on issues that are coming up for boys and young men. We also do philosophy sessions for men. We've been teaming up with Dr. Robert Grant, and that's another way to critically engage young people to say, so like say, for example, one of the statements might be something like, to be a man is to act like a man. So you're throwing out a statement that's very provoking, but it is about, okay, now I want you to talk to me about what you think about that. So you end up having this really great inquiry, a deep listening, and a non-judgmental space where people can really unpack, what does that even mean? All of the stuff that is packed around that. So that's another piece. And we also have, we do workshops around it. We have a public poster campaign, which I might get to talk to you a little bit about as well, where it is about, generating statements, because one of the main aims also of this project is to create a public dialogue around masculinity. So sometimes we would be very provocative and put out statements that makes people go, what does that mean? And so, but it is the idea of, yeah, come and talk to us about it. Let's talk, and then also we have an audio piece, which is a very deep kind of piece around many of the issues that young men face in relation to maybe mental health, suicide, talks a lot about gender-based violence, and just the transition from teenage life into adult life for men. So it's a huge project, which I could talk about all day, so I won't, but I'll leave it there. And just thanks for giving me the opportunity to share some about it.
Thanks so much, Dannielle. And if any of you who are Dublin based, they've launched What Does He Need, the poster campaign in IMA today in the Modern Art Museum. So definitely have a look at that. And also thanks, Dannielle, for illustrating an example of kind of applying your professional work practice to personal interactions. It's one of the most difficult things to do, but I think it could have such an important impact. So thanks everyone for your intros. We're gonna open up into the panel discussion now, and we're gonna maybe hear from like one or two panelists per question. So the first one I'll direct towards Tam or Dannielle, whichever one of you want to kind of take that on first. And the question is, so it's clear that we need more initiation from men in terms of the prevention of violence against women and girls, among other things. So what do you believe needs to happen in order for us to make that transition from gender equality being perceived as like a women's issue to what it actually needs to be, which is the equality of all genders across that spectrum?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to say
Yeah,
as well with that. Yeah, I mean, I suppose for us, what does he need is very much based on a project that is for men and young men, because one of the things that we believe also is women have done enough, and women are doing enough every day, and change doesn't really happen unless the people who are causing harm are at the table and are part of the discussion. So for us, it is about how do we create those spaces for it to happen, because unfortunately, a space where defensiveness might happen is not going to work. So it is for us about changing the dialogue again about, so instead of saying, why is this happening? You know, we'd never use the word why. Why is a very defensive word. If I ask anyone why, it's like, because, you know, instead you start asking different types of questions. So what do you think needs to happen for something to change? Or how can we bring men to this conversation? You know, so that for us is really important, that men need to come to the table. It's the only way that change will happen. And so, like, I know we have lots of people here today. So as Molly said, our launch today in IMA. So there's a piece where there is a public poster campaign, but there's also an audio piece on our website called whatdoesheneed.com. And we would love for any man who's here today, but also anybody who is here who has men in their lives, please encourage the men to go. And we are really calling to action. Please listen to the audio walk. Go and listen to it, have a walk. We encourage you to walk while you're doing it, because it really helps you to just kind of hear it and take it in and reflect with other men in your life about it. Reflect with them, you know, wherever you are, if it's your workplace, your sports team, down the pub, no matter where, we really want men to have these conversations. And that's what we would love to do, is call for action. Men, let's listen to this audio and let's talk. So yeah.
Thank you, Dannielle. Thanks so much. I was just thinking through in my head, I was like, I'm going to do a personal call to action now to the lads, to the lads in the group chat. Tom, do you have anything else to add for that one?
Yeah, I just echo what Dannielle says, that I think kind of gender equality, everybody's input is needed. Everybody's input is needed to achieve change in social and cultural norms. I think Dannielle has been quite right that it's so important to engage with men and boys, and also I think because men will have an important role to play as allies, yeah. And I think also what we need to get is male leaders and influencers, I think, talking about gender equality, yeah, and demonstrating this in their behavior, yeah. So because this is important to contribute to set the tone of the discussion. So maybe just to commend then Dannielle in that kind of, I suppose, one of the challenges around this is that kind of entrenched behaviors and attitudes take a long time to change, yeah. So it is very interesting to see kind of the sustained program and kind of the multi-level program that's being done around engaging men. So it's more than a case of a once-off kind of workshop, because I think people intellectually will kind of get the knowledge around what gender equality means, but I think it's very profound to make that personal change. So I think that that's really excellent work that's being done there, and it's something that our other partners also do overseas, kind of engaging people in a process of, I suppose, changing people's minds and hearts in relation to gender equality. So that's so well done on that.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, you're so right. Changing the kind of hearts and minds is the most difficult part of the work, but probably like one of the most important parts. And there's a lot of barriers to achieving gender equality. So our next question is from, and I'll direct this towards you, Tejaswy, if that's all right. I'm just wondering, from your experience in this line of work that you're in at the moment, what do you believe, like, what's the single greatest barrier for you in your work to gender equality, and what's something that kind of keeps coming up as a consistent struggle?
Thank you, Molly. So when it comes to health, it's just so difficult to pinpoint at one single barrier, because there are the psychological model of multi-layered factors, like at individual level, at institutional level, at community level, at policy making level. But overall, as an organization, Women in Global Health is challenging power and privilege. And I think gender is so much linked to the power and privilege, and the power and privilege is it is decided on the gender, on how it's distributed and how it's maintained. And gender norms decide the life opportunities that you get. When we talk about healthcare system, as I mentioned earlier, we said that majority of them are women. But at what level? There is occupational segregation in there. Like, women tend to, among the 70% of healthcare, where that being women, 90% of them are nurses and midwifery. Why are not they in the leadership roles? That's the question. And I think that's one of the barriers, like power and privilege distribution, unequal distribution in it. And other most disturbing barrier for me personally is gender pay gap. I know it's there everywhere, not just in healthcare, but it's there everywhere. Unfortunately, according to the recent Economic Forum report, it will take 257 years to achieve gender equality at the pay level. So, yeah.
Thanks so much, Tejaswy, such an important perspective. Would Teny or Tammy, would you have any thoughts on that question?
Yeah, just hearing the previous question and then this one, I think thinking about the space that we work in Armenia, one of the biggest challenges that we face surprisingly comes from the mothers and the grandmothers and this very rigid idea of what a woman or a mother should be. And, it's a lot less, that vision and that idea is transferred from mother to daughter, from grandmother to granddaughter. And it's not always in our context, it's not always that there is a negative male influence or like a direct negative male influence. It's just sort of something that's been passed down generation to generation. So we're really fighting against like cultural and traditional norms. However, I feel like that through the work that we're doing, because we're using such a positive tool like a sport, a physical activity, it's become easier to break those cultural and societal norms, because all parents want their kids to be healthy. And so in our case, although it's horrible that these kids don't really have other opportunities outside of their school, because we're the only option they have, their parents don't really have a choice but to let them go participate. So it's like it's the worst, if the village is in a worse condition, then our job becomes sort of easier because we're the only alternative and we're the only option for these kids to engage in something outside of school and home. And so it almost becomes easier to have some sort of influence within these communities. And it's bittersweet most of the time when you're in a situation like this. But looking at the World Bank data for Armenia, less than 50% of women actually work. So children are 99% of the time is raised by their moms and heavily influenced by the female figures in their lives. So all of the stereotypes that we have usually comes from the female figures in their life. And like I said, it's sort of been passed down generation to generation. So how do we sort of break that cycle of generational inequality, right? They've been taught that this is the right way, even if they were younger and felt that it wasn't right, or they felt oppressed, they're sort of passing that oppression along to the next generation. So how do we empower our girls that will in turn empower their mothers and grandmothers to sort of, say, okay, well, we're going to break that cycle here. And even if it's like a 10% break, we'll take it, and then next generation, some more, and then some more, and then some more. So, these are all things that we think about on a daily basis. And these are all challenges that we face on a daily basis. I mean, I think it all depends on like what your context is and where you're coming from, and what are sort of the historical issues that you're also facing within a certain community, right? Because history matters as well. And how you're going to go about breaking all of these cycles that are in turn causing so much pain and creating an unequal space, really. Sorry, these are just some of my thoughts that I'm just throwing out there.
No, that's like something really struck me there, Teny, when you were talking, when you said like families want their children, their daughters to be healthy, and like, why can't we frame gender equality as a part of health, and like that's a contribution to being healthy also. I wonder, I have a third question in the bank, but I wonder if we should take one first from the chat. What do you think, Aisling? Yeah, cool. Okay, so I saw one in there also from Joe, who is the founder of Good Day Cork, which is an amazing organization in Cork, asking, have any of the panelists worked on influencing popular media to do better in contributing to gender equal narratives? Tammy, do you want to jump on that one? We haven't heard from you yet.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's a huge problem, and it's one that we look at a lot because girls in particular are so influenced by media, and especially social media. And, when I'm doing workshops, I ask them, how many adverts do you think you see in a day? And they might say 100 or 200, and the average is between 6,000 and 10,000. And most of those adverts or kind of messages from the media display a very thin reflection of what we value from our women and from our girls, which is mostly around their looks, right? And not who they are as people. And that is subliminally seeping into their minds all day, every day. And sometimes it's things that you don't even notice. So one of the examples that I have is that last year I was the Irish Red Cross Humanitarian of the Year. Something I was really, really proud of, really delighted with, especially considering the amount of amazing good work that's been done. But the press release that went out, it was in loads of national newspapers, and it was Waterford mother of 3 wins, right? And it just kind of really struck me because I've never seen a man be recognized as Waterford father of 3 wins. And like, having 3 kids is something I'm really, really proud of, but it's like, that's the most important thing. And it kind of raises questions about, well, where were your kids when you were winning this award, and who's looking after them? And God, your husband must be so understanding, which is completely ridiculous. So my chair of my board, who knew a couple of those journalists, sent them an email, because I didn't want to do it because, they'd given me a platform, but my chair sent each of those journalists an email saying, you need to stop doing this. The fact that she has 3 kids is totally besides the fact of the work that she's done, and should definitely not be the headline in that regard. So, sometimes you don't even spot it, and then when you see it, you can't unsee it. And I think we all have a part to play in calling it out and asking them to kind of fix it or not do it again when possible.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Tammy. There's one that's kind of on the same note as this question of like kind of I guess I often wonder about like the kind of that concept of sisterhood and gender equality, but like that's obviously just one aspect of gender equality, and that it is essentially like solidarity support, and it doesn't just apply to women. Like working towards gender equality is about extending that strong concept of like looking out for each other to other communities. So I guess I'm always wondering, like, how can we be more intersectional within our approach, like kind of within our work for gender equality, and how can we kind of apply more action to the like all the facets of gender inequality, and to the fact that while women are disproportionately affected, so are the LGBTQ community, and so are people from communities who are marginalized in Ireland on a daily basis. So I guess I think about that in terms of like the media also. I wonder, Tammy, if you wanted to say any more about that, or Teny, or any of the other panelists.
Yeah, I'm happy to comment on that, because one of the questions that we get asked a lot is why we work with girls, and why, we've pinpointed this particular group. And it's a very good question. It's one that we're happy to answer, because certainly gender is a spectrum, and all of the issues that we address are we issues. They affect everybody. When you support the women and girls in your community, everybody benefits. So it's something that I'm happy to defend. But I guess for me, for the time being, women and girls and boys and men are influenced in very different ways for the most part. I always say, I know I'm generalizing. And until that changes, there's a very specific set of challenges that girls are facing in schools, in the media, and in how they're influenced, and role modeling and mentoring and all of those things. So until that changes, we feel that by working on these issues specifically for women and girls, we can have more impact. It's less watered down, but we're very inclusive. Anybody who wants to be part of our community, whether they're they or he, she, or anybody, is more than welcome to be part of the conversation. And actually we want more men to be part of this conversation as well, because we can only bring it so far. But until everybody's inclusive, this is where we're going to do our work.
Yeah, I hear you, Tammy. Does anyone else want to comment on that question?
I'm happy to comment on it. I just read the statement that a health system should neither be gender blind nor a gender battle, because health is a human right. So I think that's where I see being inclusive of all genders. I think it's important to provide forums and invite individuals from the marginalized communities to hear from them, because they are the ones who is facing them, and they can be the expertise on how the policies can be molded to benefit everyone, because again, health is a human right. And one of my friends actually said that the onus should not be on the individuals from the marginalized communities, but you have to educate yourself. And I think I stuck with it. Like, it should be everyone's responsibility to be educated, to be inclusive, and to all the genders. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tejaswy, and thanks everyone for all your perspectives. So this is kind of like, it's hard to have any sort of rapid fire questions when you're talking about like anything in the social justice area, but how do each of you imagine a gender equal future? Like, what does it look like to you? Maybe like if each of you want to answer in like a sentence or two. I know it's impossible, but give it a go.
Okay, I'll kick off. When I would say kind of a gender equal society, I think it calls to mind very much the values or the beliefs that Stand put out itself. I read those and I said, okay, that kind of gets it into snapshot. But I suppose my own is one of a world where difference, diversity is cherished. I think one person mentioned before a kinder world. And I suppose one of them where people's rights are respected and people have the opportunity, everybody has the opportunity to realise their potential and dreams. And thank you all for the very valuable work that each and every one of you are doing to make that a reality.
Thanks so much, Tom. Teny, do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I think, I think it's very important that we, are persistent and consistent with the work that we are doing. Most of the vulnerable communities that we work with really at the end of the day sort of depend on our presence and depend on even the little things that we do to, move things along or keep the ball rolling. And I think that it's through conversations like this, it's through creating a space where we can knowledge share and creating a space where we can, talk about some of the challenges that we're facing and learn from each other and, try not to invent the wheel again, but sort of take what we've already, have accomplished and, put it out there in the world and really, work together to accomplish everything that we want to accomplish. I don't believe in the silver bullet. I don't believe that there's one organization or one individual that's going to come in and sort of wave their magic wand and make things, magically equal. And I think that it's, a collective effort, not only through organizations, but also engaging the beneficiaries that we work with, engaging the individuals that we do all of the work that we do for. Really listening to them and sort of not having that approach where we're going to go in and say what's right and what's wrong and here's what you need to do and here's what you need to not do, because a lot of times we're learning a lot from the people that we're working with, and we need to hear what they have to say and hear some of the challenges that they are facing as well. So I think that it's very important that we have a space like this to sort of contribute and have people hear what we have to say. And I'm very thankful to have been part of this panel. And, I want to thank everyone for taking the time to come out here and listen as well.
Thank you, Teny. We're so thankful to you for being here as well. Dannielle, do you want to add your bit?
I mean, it's a very hard question. I mean, I suppose that for me, it is always about the two-prong thing around the systemic and then the individual. I might just quickly say back, there was a question there around the roles and the role in the home and stuff like that in the question. So I might actually direct it back to that. Because I suppose one thing, so of course we're always, discussing gender roles and how they're created and how they're maintained, because actually they're developed, they're created, they're not something that is a rule in the world. It's what cultures create and sustain over years. And recently I was talking to and having a conversation with young people because I'd read it about that for women to have it all, it means they need to do it all. Okay, and what the article, and obviously there is, I'm not talking about every single structure that every family, there's obviously exceptions to this, but in general it spoke a lot about for women to be able to be leaders and to be in the workforce, they but also want to have a family, they become managers of both spaces. So they become the managers of their homes, they become the managers of their, the children's timetables, they become the manager of the school runs, the food, but then they also then have the roles within the workplace. So it means that the role for women has now doubled and they are becoming exhausted and burnt out. And I mean, I know I speak to this, I work full time, but I'm also a single parent. So I know this very well, but it is about that. For how do we make the balance, the work-life balance for women the same as for other people, or, so for men, say, for example, because there is a huge amount of research that talks about women having to manage homes in order for them to be effective in the workplace. So for me, it would be a more equal balance in that area.
Thanks so much, Dannielle. So Tammy, we might get your closing comments on what a gender equal future looks like for you.
Yeah, thanks. So for me, like we could talk about this for hours, right? Because it looks like lots of different things. But for me, it's that everybody feels secure, heard, valued, and empowered to play an active role in society and to achieve whatever their dreams are, and for that to be respected. And I think the key to doing that is during those teenage years to teach both the boys and the girls to channel anger, sadness, and frustration in a positive way. And I think that's one of the key things that we need to teach young people, and it's really going to make a difference. And we've seen it make a difference, you know, when these young women are creating environments in their schools that are safe and secure, and where everyone has a voice and is respected, and that could be transformative. So I think that work needs to be done really now as much as possible with those teenagers, and hopefully we'll see the impact of that into the future.
Amazing, thank you, Tammy. I think the Shona project and What Does He need to link up and do a thing. Tejaswy, what about you? What does a gender equal future look like for you?
I echo with all the thoughts that were shared so far, but I think again, I would say women holding equal leadership roles in global health, because they deliver it, they have the right to say. So that's what a gender equal world looks like to me.
Thank you, Tejaswy. I'm going to pass you all back to Aisling now.
Super. Thank you so much to everyone. We're just coming up to the end of our time here together. Just something that even amongst kind of the stand kind of crew we were talking about earlier today, is that social justice starts at home, right? This is something that I keep with me all the time. The things that we talk about and think about in the wider world, you know, we need to live and breathe in our everyday relationships, in our homes, in our friend groups. And so with that in mind, I'll encourage everyone that's here to kind of just let all of this information, all of these words of wisdom really kind of sink in. Think about it, reflect on it, and then move toward this gender equal future, right, in a sort of thoughtful and collaborative way. So in closing, just on behalf of SUIS's STAND program and the 10,000 Students Initiative, I'd like to say thank you to all of our panelists here today for sharing their expertise and experience, to Molly for moderating and guiding this discussion so graciously. The time that we spent together today to learn a little bit more about the ways in which women and gender minorities actually experience inequality is so important as we continue to work together to build this gender equal future that we know is possible. I would also like to say thank you to all of those participating today as audience members for your really thoughtful questions and comments and messages of support along the way. With your presence, gender equality really is much more of a reality, right? And your presence here today says that right out loud. So thank you. If you haven't already, I really encourage you to take the pledge to imagine equality. You can click the link that you'll find in the chat box now. I think Madeline will throw it in there for us. When you do that, you'll receive an action pack with information and even more ideas for ways to support a more gender equal world. We'd also very much appreciate any feedback that you have on this panel so that we can continue to bring you engaging and illuminating opportunities to work for positive change in our world. We'll throw that link in there as well, but we'll also send it in a follow-up email with all of the information from our panelists, ways to stay in contact with them. We're so lucky that we get to, as a job, you know, spend time with these incredibly inspiring and motivating people. And so we want to support them as well by helping you to connect with them. So that's all from me today. I will bid you farewell. Have a great weekend, and I hope to see you all soon.
Thanks, bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much. Cheerio.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks a million. That was great.